Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Millionaire Maker and Sunday Million lineup review. I, again, did not win $1 million, and I did not win the Sunday Million. I actually probably had one of my worst weekends of football this year. I made a couple of bad picks, and that's going to happen. I didn't really have the good guys. But enough about me. Let's talk about these lineups. I'm going to start with the Sunday Million lineup. This guy Dago 3-1, and obviously I think the content of these plays are good, but I want to focus first on the lineup construction because I think this guy Dago clearly is into making lineups that have smart correlations, and maybe it was an accident, maybe it wasn't, but I think that this was probably on purpose, and I think it was really smart. The first thing he did was he paired Mason Crosby with the Packers D, paired that kicker with the defense, which I preach a lot. I think it's a really smart move, especially if the kicker is really skilled. And it paid off here a little bit. I mean, the Packers D didn't do that well, but an example of where it'd pay off this weekend would have been Nick Novak, and the Texans D did quite well, a lot of sacks and a lot of field goals. So I think that pairing works really well. He also did a quarterback with two of his receivers, obviously Cooks and Kobe Flinner, off of Carolina D that doesn't actually seem that good this year. It seemed like a legit play. And then what I really like is with his other two receivers, he used receivers on opposing teams. And if you have listened to, by Daily Fantasy Football Edge, where they had a guy talking about correlations and looking at studying correlations, you know that basically receiving games of opposite teams are correlated a bit. So I think using Beckham and Perriman, who were legit plays on their own, but using them together I think was smart, especially Perriman only at 4,900 with Steve Smith out. He's going to get a few more looks. I think he actually got, look at it here, he actually had 8 targets, so obviously a very smart play against a Giants defense that's kind of middle of the road, and only 4,900. And then I had talked about why I liked Odell Beckham Jr. on my video on Saturday. I think the perception was here, oh, he's slipping, there's more talent in this offense, blah, blah. But if you actually looked at the numbers, he actually has more targets this year, and I'm not even including the game today. Like, before the game today, he actually had more targets percentage-wise this year than he had last year, and more red zone targets. So I don't think this is going to be a down year for him. It's easier said now, but you can check back that video Saturday and see what I looked at to predict that. And then I think it was smart of him here to use running backs that weren't in any of these games, because they can eat up fantasy points for other people, and especially opposing offenses. And running back especially is a position where you want to take guys who are high volume guys and just pick guys who are in good matchups. So Lamar Miller, he hasn't had a touchdown this year, but he's a really high volume guy. He gets a lot of snaps. He's used in the passing game, and Indy's D is really, really bad in terms of if we look at that site Football Outsiders that I showed you. If you look at defensive yards per drive, they're actually at the very bottom. So they're a really, really bad defense. So do not underrate them. I think they face Tennessee next week. DeMarco Murray is going to be a really fantastic play. And then obviously LaShawn McCoy against San Francisco. Really great matchup. He's another guy who gets high volume. These are the type of guys who want to plug and play into your lineups week after week. And yeah, anyways, great lineup from Dago. I think using the correlations, making a smart play, that's basically how you win a GPP. And he won, so he made it look easy, and congratulations to him. So now moving on to the Millionaire Maker, and I think this one was certainly interesting, more with the content of the players in this lineup and less about the construction. So first of all, I'm going to point out a running back was actually used in the flex this week to win the Millionaire Maker, which has not happened yet. And I think this was the week that this would happen, because there are so many good running back plays this week. And actually, I mean, if you really think about it, using 3 running backs actually hurt him a bit, because Le'Veon Bell, who was priced at 7,900, performed probably worse than a lot of wide receivers at the price range. So maybe it wasn't the smartest move, but I think, these rules aren't hard and fast. I definitely played some running backs in the flex this week, and I think it was a smart move. So it paid off for this guy Malin 21. But there's definitely a lot of plays in this lineup that were pretty contrarian, or surprisingly so. And looking back, they don't really seem that contrarian. But I just want to go over this. So first, Rob Gronkowski. So he's a guy who, he's had a slow start of the season. He's been hampered by injury. And if you're not familiar with daily fantasy, if you haven't been playing that long, you might not know how amazing he really is of a fantasy player. And I'm really upset with myself because he's really an $8,000 player and he's priced at $6,700. So regardless of matchup, this is just way too good of a price. And I think people kind of forgot how good this guy really is. And, the offense obviously has a lot of weapons, but Gronk is going to be the main guy. I think he's in play basically every week, especially against the Steelers next week. If his price doesn't raise, you definitely don't want to be sleeping on this guy. And he's the type of tight end that can have a 2 or 3 touchdown game. For example, last year he actually had a 3 touchdown game against the Steelers. So really, do not sleep on Rob Gronkowski. I'm a little upset with myself that he did, but he clearly is a good play, and I think this is smart from this guy to pay up for tight end and be a little different, because I think that there just hasn't been that many great tight end performances so far this season, but that's not going to hold. There's going to be some really big ones, and Gronkowski's starting it off. Michael Thomas, obviously, I think a lot of 15% ownership. He was a guy that people definitely were on. He's been performing well and was quite cheap at $4,300. But I think these plays, Kenny Britt and Golden Tate, are the ones that really interest me here. So I did a lot of things wrong this week, but one thing I did do right was Golden Tate. I played him quite a bit. And I think it was a really smart play with what was going on with this Lions offense, because what had happened is they were without Eric Ebron and they're out without Theo Riddick. Now, that's a running back and a tight end. And so you're thinking, oh, well, why does that matter very much? But if you actually look at the Lions offense as a whole this season, and I'm hoping this is not including week 6, because I really don't want it to, and it doesn't. You can see that Theo Riddick actually takes up 18% of the Lions' targets, and Eric Ebron takes up about 14%. So that's 30% of their entire team's targets that basically just went away for this week. Now, Ebron was actually out in week 5, and if we look at week 5, we can see, oh, wait a second, no tight end actually got any targets in week 5. So basically, you have the tight end position that's not getting any receiving yards. You have the pass-catching running back who's now out. And you have 3 receivers who play basically every passing down. And so when you have a situation like that, you have just so much volume being concentrated on 3 players. And the matchup is actually pretty good. But even if it was bad, I would have really liked the Lions wide receivers a lot. And wow, it really paid off for Golden Tate, who I think was $4,400. Really, really cheap. And let's just look at targets really quick. Golden Tate 10, Anquan Bolden 9, Marvin Jones 6. So that's basically 25 out of 31 total targets. We're going to the wide receivers. There was only 1 tight end that got a target. And then Andre Roberts got a couple. There was just a massive amount of fantasy points that were clearly going to this receiving game. And I think that's something that people overlook. They love matchup. Let's get the guy in the good matchup. And they kind of overlook, well, wait a second. There's some injuries here. What do these injuries mean for the volume of the other wide receivers? How does it affect them? And in this case, it affected them so much that all these guys, even Marvin Jones, he only had 6 targets and 10 yards. But I think if we play this game, 9 times out of 10, he gets 5, 6, 7 catches, a lot of yards, and has a much better game. So I think that was a really smart play. And the other thing was Kenny Britt. So again, I think this was really smart, using this correlation with Tate on one side and then the wide receiver on the other team on the other side. But this is another interesting thing, because Britt had actually been performing pretty well this year, and I got the wrong side of this game because Britt had a tough matchup versus Darius Slay. I just used Tavon Austin a lot, and that did not work out. But I think something to think about is, you'll have offenses like the Rams that are really big running offenses. The same with Buffalo. Both these teams run quite a bit. So a lot of their receivers can be overlooked from week to week when their numbers just don't jump out at you. Like these guys are not getting that many targets, they're not getting that many catches, but it's mainly a factor of that their team just runs the ball so much. But when you get into a situation with these guys where maybe they get into a situation where they're down or they're facing a really bad passing D, you might see them passing more. And if that's the case, these guys like Kenny Britt can become really, really good plays. So if we actually look at the Rams passing offense, and again, this does not include this week, you can see Kenny Britt, 23% target share, Tavon Austin, 28% target share. Those are really, really good numbers, and just to compare it to another passing offense, and obviously these guys aren't the same, but that's basically like the Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb of pass share for a team. So these guys get a lot of volume. They just don't. They get a lot of volume compared to how much the Rams pass, but they just don't get a lot of volume because the Rams don't pass that much. So I think they get overlooked a lot. And if you see a team that's a running team that you suspect might pass it more, and let's just look right here and see if there's any teams that fit that bill this week. And Buffalo might be one of them, actually. And I think this is a great segue because Buffalo has a similar situation. So Miami is a really, really bad pass D. And Buffalo is a team that runs it quite a bit. If we look at their stats from this week, Tyrod Taylor only threw 26 times. There just was not that much, quote-unquote, fantasy goodness from this receiving game. And they ran it 44 times. So they ran it like twice as much as they passed. But if you look at this Buffalo offense and you look at target share, this guy Robert Woods, 23%. That's really high, especially considering that we're not even taking into account that Sammy Watkins had played in some of these games. If we looked at the last 3 weeks, this number is closer to 30. So this guy Robert Woods gets a ton of target share. Charles Clay has almost 20%, which is really high for a tight end. Usually they hover around 15%. Even Marquise Goodwin, he's more of a deep threat, but he does get about 15% target share. So if this team gets into a situation where they're going to pass it a lot, either by being down in the game or just having a really great matchup, these guys are going to become much better plays, but most people are just not even going to think about it. And I think in this matchup versus Miami, I think a lot of these guys could be really good plays. And I think that's why Britt became a really good play against the Lions. He's a guy who gets a lot of volume. And the Rams passing game happened to A, pass a lot, and B, actually do really well. And that really pays off when you have a guy like Britt who's going to get those consistent targets in that passing game. So I think this is a really, really smart lineup. Both these lineups, I think, are some of the savviest that I've seen so far this year. I think there's some really smart plays using the correlations, but I think these lineups really had it all. So congratulations to Malin21. Congratulations to Dago3. Really great lineups, guys, and hopefully I can follow in your footsteps. Maybe I have a bounce back week. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you do like this video, please share it. Please retweet it. Spread the word. Click the subscribe button so you can get notified when more videos come out. And please click the like button as well. Thumbs up. So thank you guys so much for watching, and good luck with your lineups next week.